Welcome everyone to Azure Back to School 2023. Um, and today's session is on Microsoft new data analytics platform, which is Fabric. So yeah, a quick slide about me first, who I am. I'm a senior data and AI engineer. So I do get the flexibility to work with multiple projects. So I usually work around Microsoft Stack. You can connect with me on LinkedIn if you want. I write blogs sometimes. I'm trying to grow a YouTube channel as well, where I'm trying to establish the latest trends in data and analytics space. And I'm also leading a group, which is Microsoft Fabric and Synapse Data Engineering User Group Norway. So we try to host sessions there with good speakers. So feel free to check that out. Let's get started. Uh, so what we're going to cover today is first we're going to set some context by looking at challenges companies face today around data analytics. Next, I'll provide you an overview of Fabric and its capabilities. We'll walk through, some sample architecture and look at lakehouse architecture. Then we'll go through some workloads for data engineering and warehousing purposes. Uh, Finally, I can also show you some promising AI features coming to Fabric and a simple open AI integration as well. So yeah, let's briefly discuss the data challenges the organization face today. This is the picture released by Matt, um, who runs the First Mark venture. This image shows that the Matt landscape, showing the landscape of machine learning, AI, and data. So this shows that we're dealing with a massive explosion of data components from diverse portfolios. Maybe not only just the diverse portfolio, but also different sources, which includes IoT sensors, websites, social media, mobile apps, and etc. So not only is the volume of the data is growing exponentially, but the type of data offerings also and the products also coming in the market, which is increasing rapidly. So to make sense out of all this, often organizations stitch together, a confused mixture of products. So with so many moving parts, integrating these tools become a major pain point. Uh, Data gets copied back and forth, transformed, and tried to fit in each other's system. So aligning outputs from these tools also become a major pain point. So we end up with like a fragmented insights instead of a single source of truth. So that's why most analytical architecture you see out there consist of siloed environments where data is just being copied and transformed from one to another suite to cover different needs and requirements. So for example, let's say we can take like data which lands into data lake. Then it gets structured for cloud data warehousing purposes. Then it imports into spatial model for data science experiments. So these copy creates like discrepancy and latency. And of course, moving data between system requires excessive engineering effort. And especially if there's a like case between data engineers and analysts and data scientists, which requires more collaboration. So the current landscape has a lot of challenges uh, in terms of both complexity, silos, skill gaps, just too many barriers to obtain the value out of data. Let's try to paint this in one of my favorite data restaurant analogy. Imagine you're a business which has a nice, fancy restaurant. The dishes you serve here are product service solution. And the secret behind is for every dish is a special sauce that elevates the dish, right? Make it more memorable for users. Uh, but here's the twist. Imagine your head chef has to run in different kitchen all the time when he needs that specific sauce. So one kitchen can be customer preferences. Then he has to run maybe for financial insights, maybe marketing trends, etc., etc. And then it become more chaotic for him. So how can this chef, which in our case are data guys, assemble that perfect sauce when ingredients are scattered around um, in different tools and the platforms. So bringing this all together, moving data across different system, of course, need heavy effort, which results into delayed in getting insights. Now imagine a nice, perfect integrated kitchen, well equipped with modern tools to harness the power of data without duplicating it. Let's say it has high-powered blender to combine the data from diverse sources, maybe an oven to bake and transform the data for various needs, and knives to precisely slice and dice for in-depth analysis, a specialized pan to cook up this robust machine learning models. So this is more like an integrated streamlined kitchen where each tool complement each other for ensuring kind of efficiency and precision. So the fragmentation we talk about, which is challenges for many organizations, the data silos that we talk about, which is preventing business from harnessing the full power of data. What could be the solution? Of course, having an integrated platform where all of this data sources converge, making a data chef to whip his signature dish efficiently. So it's quite clear that the organization needs that unified analytics approach to harness this data explosion, which bring us to Microsoft Fabric. But why Fabric with so many tools out there? What made Microsoft Fabric or Microsoft introduce Fabric? The answer lies in integration and unification. So the Fabric seamlessly integrate with wide variety of Microsoft products, ensuring your data flows remain unhindered. Moreover, it's a unified approach, means that if you're dealing with real-time analytics or maybe AI-driven analytics, Fabrics try to get you covered. Um, Fabrics combines proven technologies which you have seen before, Azure Data Factory, Synapse Analytics, and Power BI into one platform. Uh, this enables the need for the flexible and scalable system to ingest, process, and analyze the data more efficiently than before. So let's consider an example. A retailer company maybe, which has a customer data into multiple systems. Maybe it has a website clicks in AWS. Maybe it has campaigns in Salesforce. Maybe it has inventory data in on-prem system. So combining and analyzing this data involves like setting up first the platform and then getting up the network and security requirements correct. And of course, then it comes the complex ETL, weeks of infrastructure and data engineering work. With Fabric, you can ingest this data by just spinning up the Fabric capacity. The built-in connectors out there can help you ingest the data into Delta Lake format. Then that this Delta Lake format can be used by different teams, like analytics teams or um, data science team without duplicating the data. So this reduced the whole effort of reporting time from weeks to hours. And this example highlights that how organization can save time and efforts using Fabric. Uh, yep. So let's look at some key capabilities. So Fabric brings together with full suites of data services. For data integration, it offers data factory with managed pipelines, of course, data flows, connectors, and shortcuts to external data. This help you easily ingest from hundred of sources. If we talk about Synapse data engineering, it provides Jupyter-style notebooks with Python, Scala, .NET support, Spark SQL. So you can get manage Spark cluster. You can also enjoy new features like Data Wrangler to visually clean and explore the pandas data frame. For warehousing purposes, it has like serverless SQL pool, kind of an architecture which auto scale to any volume. This also enables like querying the data more efficiently from lakehouse instead of imported caches. Then we can talk about data science, which operationalize model using machine learning and ML flow. It also offers real-time analytics, so you can use it on your data stream with options like KQL, to query languages. It also tightly integrated with Power BI for BI intelligence dashboards and reports. So you really get the best out of data analytics in single platform. And of course, here's the link to get started with it as well. Cool. Let's talk about the key innovation in Fabric, which is powered by One Lake. So, unlike separate data store, One Lake uses open storage format, which is Delta Bucket format, as you can see on screen. This means that any workload or user that can access the same data with no walls between them. So, for example, let's say a Spark notebook can process the data. This instantly available by SQL endpoint without copying it. So this brings again an entire process more into the smoother end, which where we can only focus uncovering the insights rather than shuffling the data between the platform. So it also been accessible to Databricks environment as well. You can use ABFS path to access it. Yeah. Now let's talk about Data Activator, which is a new capability within Microsoft Fabric. Um, so it allows you to monitor the data, uh, taking that automated action when the conditions are detected. So for example, sending alerts when KPI crosses the threshold in Power BI report. The use case can be variety of use case there are. So one of I can think of is that, let's say an industrial equipment exceed with certain temperature threshold. Um, of course, you can start a customer retention workflow when the satisfaction rate drops. So definitely a good productive tool via workflow automation. Now let's take a step back and dive into this world of lakehouse architecture. So when I say lake house, I want you to picture like a vast shimmering body of water filled with data insights ready to be found. But we don't talk about Spain holidays here. It's very essential this data to be well structured so that it satisfies the needs of insights. So let's talk about lakehouse zones, which is of course the powerful platform to handle big data. As we divide these zones into certain areas, you can imagine that as a separate swimming areas in your giant water area. So first, let's talk about raw zone, which is represented by thrilling water slides where data gets sliced into the pool and it splashes in unfiltered format. So we don't do any modification or transformation here. Then we have this silver and or enriched zone portrayed as a serene, lazy river where data is getting smoothing makeover. So we are doing transformation, applying business logic here. Then we have this final gold and curated zone, which represented as like pristine Olympic sized swimming pool where data is polished and ready for analysts to dive into. So let's say data scientists and automated process might dive into raw zone as well, but we recommended to keep it off limits for casual data swimmers because the data can be quite murky up here. But the gold zone, on the other hand, is like a prime spot for business areas or analysts to dive into. And there we are, a bunch of analysts, engineers, and scientists ensuring data quality, safety, and reporting of data lakehouse. Um, we might not have this cool beach body as you see here, but when it comes to rescuing your data, we are the go-to heroes. All right, jokes aside, let's look a more detailed view of typical lakehouse architecture in Fabric. So what you do is you ingest the raw data from diverse sources into the landing zone. You can use various techniques like pipelines, shortcuts, or notebooks, or data flow. Uh, the process refines into refined layers by applying transformation, etc. You can use shortcuts, which allows you to access the external data without copying it. And finally, the Lakehouse provides SQL endpoint to query this process data, and the Power BI to expose it, which can directly analyze the data in near real time using direct lake mode. All right, enough theory. Let's see this bad boy in action. We're now in Power BI plus Fabric portal. We'll play with some of the key capabilities here. So I've got a workspace, which is Azure Back to School demo, which I spin up on Fabric trial capacity. So if I go to workspace setting, if I go to premium, I can clearly see that it is spin up on trial capacity. But in case you have purchased a Fabric capacity, you can totally switch it back to Fabric capacity by navigating through portal here. We can also see that you can connect to additional Azure services like log analytics. There's also built-in Git integration for version control and collaboration. Currently, it seems for Power BI. Uh, Now we can also see that if we click on new and if we click on show all, we can see that we have a wide variety of services which we can spin up. Uh, so we can see that it has a lot of options like data engineering space which have notebooks. We have Spark jobs. For data factory, we have data pipeline. We can clean the data by data flow gen 2. uh, we have data warehouse space, we have data science space. For reporting and dashboard, we can use Power BI. For real-time analytics, we can use KQL database and so on. So we got a full stack here from preparation to visualization available in a single interface, which kind of streamlines working with resources. Uh, Now let's first start with data factory pipeline where we ingest the data from SQL database in this demo. Uh, so let's start and take a look on that. Um, I have already built one data pipeline here. What did this data factory pipeline do? It's trying to load the data into a lakehouse. Uh, so first up, what we have is a lookup activity uh, that queries. If I click on that, yeah, if I click on settings, uh, it kind of queries a source SQL database to get a list of all the tables that we need that we want to copy over. So if I click on preview data, this kind of retrieves the table names that we need to copy. Next up we have is for each loop, which will iterate through each of this table name. So in the settings, you can see I have applied the output of my lookup activity. And within the uh, for each look for each activity, we can see that we have a copy activity that do the actual transform. So this copy activity grabs the data from each SQL table within this dynamic query. So it has a select statement, which has a parameter, which is current item. Um, and then it syncs it back to Lakehouse within our destination uh, as a bucket format. So we have constructed a dynamic folder path to land the files, including the table name and the date uh, when it ingesting the data in. So this keeps the data separated by source table and the date as the data lands in the lake. So in summary, what does this pipeline do is that it lookups the source table name, loop through each table, copies the data from that SQL table, lands into Lakehouse's bucket, organized by table name and the date, which kind of gives an automated way to batch load the data from multiple SQL tables to get into Lakehouse. You can schedule this if you want, um, or you can connect this to control table for watermarking purposes. But the idea here is that the lookup and the for each activity handles the table iteration while the copy activity moves the data. So using the data factory, it's a great option for the regular, bulk data ingestion into the lakehouse from external system like SQL database. So now if we open our landing lake house. So if I sort it by type, and if I go to landing lake house, what we can see here is that we have created like tables with the names. So you can see table with their names, and within that hierarchy, we can see each date when the data is get loaded into the bucket format. So let's do a little bit of fun part. Let's try to load this bucket data into Delta table within our Lakehouse Explorer. We can just simply right click to the table, right click and then click on load to table and then click on new table. What it asks us what this new table name would be. So I'm just saying underscore delta, and then I'm choosing my source file type, which is buckets. I'm also including all the subfolders because there could be possibilities that we have loaded the data on multiple instances. So if I click on load, it start loading the customer to table customer delta within the table section. Uh, so this kind of auto registered that table into like Metastore for easy management for us. No coding required. It's kind of a click ETL, which makes me easy, which makes the job easy for me for additional processing. Uh, the table area here is like where we usually store kind of finished or prepared data. Any table which is be loaded whether by Spark or UI get registered here in a Metastore catalog. We can preview the data if we click on here. Uh, it's generating the preview. Yep, it's taking time. Yep, there we have. Now we can also kind of verify the schema which got registered. Uh, the file section here is kind of a loading dock. This is where the raw data lands from the sources before it processed. Anything that kind of needs a wrangling lives here. And between these two areas, we kind of build the picture of lake house zones. It can be either landing lake house, we can bring or create another bronze or silver or gold lake house using various techniques. We can also see that it is pre-configured with a SQL endpoint up here. Uh, this makes the data instantly available for consumption by SQL. So let's click on that, and then it's loading the SQL endpoint. So I can see that I can easily uh, um, make it use for my SQL query purposes. I can analyze it by just clicking here, uh, and I can create SQL query to analyze my data further by using the SQL endpoint. So as you can see, Fabric is ingesting data seamless. And now, for my data engineering friends, Fabric provides a fully optimized Spark environment out of the box. So what you get is like pre-configured high-performance cluster with auto scaling, uh, rapid session startup time, so no more waiting around, um, built-in optimization and auto tuning, so you don't have to mess with configurations. It also supports, of course, the popular language like Python, Scala, Spark SQL, so you can operationalize your workflows with pipelines and scheduling. Yeah, so let me show you an example of data engineering starter kit, which comes with pre-installed demo. So let's check it out. So before we dive in, let me point out some handy settings for my data engineers and scientists friends. So if we go to workspace setting and if we navigate through data engineering and science section, what we see is something called Spark Compute. Here you can configure your new pools with different sizes and properties, which are much faster than before. So no more waiting times, uh, which you used to do in Synapse. It also comes with like ML Flow built-in support for model tracking. uh, it also has library management, so you can feed your external libraries. In my case, as you can see, I'm feeding OpenAI and LangChain libraries, which I will use for later demo. So no need to like install again and again for your session.
So let's now try and build or try and look something which comes as a sample, which is called data engineering starter kit. Uh, so I'll try to use this sample, walk you through with this sample to explore the fundamentals of Lakehouse from the data engineering point of view. So if I click on sample, if I click on notebook, and if I click on data engineering starter kit, it started creating that sample for me. So what does this sample notebook does? It kind of gives you a walkthrough based on data engineering tasks that we usually do. So first up, it's reading the Puckett file. So let's just fire up a session. Um, and after it's finished reading that file, which is already available, so it comes as pre-installed. So if you go to like file section, you can clearly see the file is already available and already comes as a pre-installed mode. So it's reading that file and it's firing up the pool and it's try to write the file in the delta format in the overwrite mode and it is saving the file in the table name. So if you don't define the path, it automatically save the file as delta table, which is optimized format, and it shows up in the table section. So, writing the data out as delta lake table, which is specially designed to store like or manage the large data set. Um, the delta lake tables they adds like more transactional capabilities like updates, deletes on top of Puckett files. Super handy, really good for reading the large data set much more in an efficient manner. And also, you can do the time travel thing on top of it. You can do schema evolution, much more easy versioning than the normal Puckett files. So it started the session in 1 minute 19 seconds, if you can see here, which is faster than before. And now it's reading the same uh, data in the files. So you can easily visualize in the same notebook how does the data look like. So now let's try to write this data back in a table section, try to persist it. Uh, yep, it's writing it back. And if you have not defined the path, as I said, it's writing it to default table section in V order optimized way. And if you are quite familiar with like SQL query, if you're coming from a SQL background, these queries is quite familiar to you. You can fire them up, so you can check how's the data look like. You can profile the data by limiting maybe 1,000 rows. Uh, and if I refresh it up here, I can clearly see that the table will start showing up uh, in my table section. I can print the schema if I want to. Let me show it to you here. So I can print the schema uh, and I can analyze the schema. I can also check the schema through UI, which is stored in a man or managed by a metastore. Uh, so I can do all that. Now let's look some scenarios. Yep, we have scenario number one, which is data cleaning and transformation. So what it does, it kind of try to clean the data, maybe filter out the columns based on certain conditions. In our case, is strip distance greater than zero or fair amount is greater than zero. It also cleansing the data by transforming the column, store and forward flag to Boolean, pick up and drop off date time to timestamp. Let me show you something really nice. Let me show you a handy tool. Uh, if I let's say if I'm just gonna call this as Spark, or maybe let's try now. Let's try and transform this into Pandas data frame. So what I'm doing right up here is I'm taking the Spark data frame. Uh, maybe. Yeah, I'm taking like a Spark data frame. I'm trying to transform into Pandas data frame, and I'm going to show you a handy tool called Data Wrangler. What it does, it kind of automatically detects all your Pandas data frame available in your notebook, and you can use that data wrangler for data cleansing purpose. So it's kind of low code tool for data cleansing and transformation purpose. The same thing what you're doing, the cleansing and transformation by code, you can also use the UI for the same, which I'm going to show you. So if I click on that, this whole code will write the cleansed data back to table section in underscore cleanse naming convention, and also generate a pandas data frame for me, so I can use like a data wrangler just for the demonstration purposes. So if I refresh it, I can see the table has been written underscore cleansed, and if I go back and I can launch the data wrangler, and it's detected the pandas data frame that we have created. So if you're a citizen developer, you can launch this data wrangler. uh, you can start doing cleansing and transformation. So its first stop is to check that like it has detected certain uh, summary for you, it has generated certain summary for you. So it has shown that it has certain missing values. There's no duplicate rows it has found, so which is a good and handy information. And you can also see the data distribution per columns, great for initial data profiling, similar to what we used to do in Power Query. So now I can use this UI to do the similar transformation that we have seen uh, before in the code. So we were talking about trip distance and fare amount. So I can click on trip distance, I can filter that. I can just say greater than 0. uh, and I can also add condition that maybe and or in our case it's and. So let's say fare amount should be greater than 0. And I can apply that, and I can quickly see that I can preview the data here, that how does the data look like after when I'm shaping it. So I can quickly analyze that. So it makes my jobs much more easier to do this without coding. I can see the validation results, maybe like ensure the changes are applied properly. And once I'm done with that, uh, I can quickly go back. I can save it as a CSV file, or I can just add this data or code back to notebook. So let's say if I click add code back to notebook, it will generate all those transformation code in my notebooks. So you can see that the code has been generated by data wrangler, and it has applied the same cleansing step, which is trip distance greater than 0 and fare amount greater than 0. So it's a huge productivity boost for more of interactive cleansing and transformation in Fabric notebooks. Uh, Keep in mind that it's currently available only for Pandas data frame. I have heard that product team is working on its availability for Spark data frame as well. Super cool. So now let's explore the scenario number 2, which is EDA based analysis. So it's explore for us the data to understand that what we are working with, to uncover any data quality issues or any kind of anomalies, etc., etc. So first, it kind of if I just run it, it sees that it kind of shows me the count of the data, so I can clearly or verify the size of the data. In our case, it's 61,000 rows. After I count the data, I can also check the types of the column in the data. Um, Quickly check the data types. Uh, I can also like verify or group the count per vendor. I can see that how many vendors for vendor number 1, vendor number 2, how many transactions has happened. Uh, Now it also shows us the oldest pickup date and the latest pickup date. Um, so really cool. Um, Now I think what it does is kind of finds the trends over the time. So it kind of group the pickup date and try to count how many like pickups has happened over the time. So really cool. Let's see what it does more. Yep, it kind of find min and max values, which is super cool. uh, and it also generate like certain sort of statistics to do those statistics based analytics for us. So it kind of find the mean, the standard deviation, min, max, count, etc. uh, and I think it can you can even plot a certain distribution over the time. For example, it's plotting an histogram, which is a distribution of fair amount. So if I scroll it down and zoom in again, so it sort of trying to plot the fair amount and try to find the distribution, that what is the distribution of fair amount. So you can see the fair amount 0 to 50 is highly available or highly frequently available in the data. Now it's tried to also create like another diagram, which is try to find the uh, correlation between fair amount and the trip distance, which is also really nice feature. So in summary, you can use like this EDA based analytics to use aggregate statistics, plots to understand more deeply how your taxi trip data looks like. Super useful for any sort of quality or further analysis purposes. Now, let's explore scenario number three, which is data aggregation and summarization. So what it does, it kind of summarize the data. So if you have like large data sets, it kind of easily you can condense the large data set for your more easier reporting and visualization purpose in the dashboard. So just group and summarize the data, but I think by month and year. Uh, and I think finally for machine learning, what you can do is download the data set and yeah, read the data set here. What it does, it's also joining. It creates a join based on location ID. Try to further enrich the data. Try to bring more features like zone. Uh, and then I think it's further using those feature to create like supplement, what do you call, like aggregate based to analyze like an aggregate features for maybe machine learning model. So it looks like it's creating like an average fair amount per zone type, uh, uh, and doing like further analysis on for your machine learning models. So in a nutshell, that this notebooks demonstrate like some common data engineering tasks like cleansing, uh, EDA, aggregation, machine learning prep work, or by all using PySpark, SQL, and Delta Lake. It's very convenient and pre-built starter kit. Let's try and do one more thing. Let's say I want to enrich the data from a landing lake house. We have previously seen that we have ingested customer data from Adventure Work data warehouse. I want to take the data in, but I don't want to move the data once again. So what I can do, uh, I can go to my lake house. In case this sample lake house, I can create something we call as shortcuts. So if you click on the tables and if you see that I have an option which is called new shortcuts, I can create a shortcut and I have an option to bring the external data as well from external sources. But I'll just use internal one for the demo purposes. If I click on one lake, I have an option to bring the data from my different lake houses. I can choose landing, and we have previously seen that we have created one delta table, which is customer delta, and I can bring the data in. So instead of moving the data or copying the data back to my another lake house, I can just shortcut it and for the referencing purposes, and the data would be readily available to me without doing any movement. So zero copying or exporting need. So one more thing to notice here, if you guys can see, there's a very small sign up here. It's a link sign, uh, which represents that the data or the table has been shortcut. This small sign up here represent the same. So you can check this small icon for that purposes, which we have added directly from Lakehouse. I can further explore this. I can open this in my existing notebook. Let's say if I click on sample notebook, uh, I can start working on this data immediately. Uh, yeah, if you see up here, created a sample code for me to analyze this customer uh, yep, customer delta table in the notebook. Yep. Also, what you can do is check this data, what is the underlying data in files by using something called One Lake Explorer. We can open that, and it's like a OneDrive for the data. Uh, so if I try and show you that, yeah, there you go. So we have one lake up here. You can right click and sync from one lake so that all your files, whatever you're doing on the UI is sync in One Lake Explorer. So in our case, we have Azure Back to School. So we have the sample lake house. We have the same segregations that we have tables, we have files. We can see in tables we have generated customer delta table, green trip taxi data, and the cleanse data. All of those things which you have done. Uh, and if I like just sync it up here, yeah, you have customer delta, green trip taxi, and the same data has been available to you, and you can analyze that. Okay, it's been stored in exact delta lake format that we all have seen. So let's talk about one of my favorite capabilities is direct lake mode for Power BI. This lets Power BI analyze the data directly without needing to import anything. So you get amazing performance with near real-time freshness since it's reading the data live. What I understood is that the direct lake mode combines the both aspect of direct query and the import mode, once again um, removing the need of data duplication, caching, and also enabling the queries across massive data sets using something called V-order optimization. It also supports XML endpoint as well. So let's take a look at a report which we loaded before with like 60 million records. Let's see how the performance goes. So before dive into the report, let's take a look at the table we're supposed to analyze. Let's use the shortcut to reference the existing Delta Lake table, which I used previously in like NYC taxi dataset. So without duplicating or moving the data, I'll just use that shortcut to bring that table in. Uh, So NYC taxi lake house, and then I choose the tables and I go to the last table, which is NYC green taxi, and I just create the shortcut. And what I'm doing, I just want to take a peek at how much data we are working with. So I'll run like a quick SQL query on my SQL endpoint to verify like how many records that we have before we jump into see this direct lake mode. So I'll right click and instead of this top 100 and all that stuff, I'll just remove that and I'll say count star. I show me the number of records. So we're dealing with like around 62 million rows, which we're about to analyze. And let's look at the data set that this is connected to. So if I go to my previous build data set, which is on YouTube demo workspace, so I have built this NYC taxi lake house underscore custom dataset, which is connected to SQL endpoint, which is like automatically generated when you build a lake house. So if I open that custom uh, dataset, uh, I can clearly confirm that all of my tables which I have created in the model are in direct lake mode. So if I click on any of the table and if I go in advanced, I can quickly verify that the storage mode is a direct lake mode uh, uh, for our models. So if we have used like direct query mode, we be like dependent on the performance of underlying SQL based system for every DAX query. So with like billions of rows, filters or slicers would be become little bit too sluggish for interactive analysis. On the other hand, if we have used like import mode, uh, it would require like importing all the data first, and any source changes would have been picked up in the next refresh time. But since we are in the direct lake mode here, we expect the fast interactive analysis without importing the data, so that the engine, the Power BI engine, directly scan the compressed lakehouse storage into the memory. So we can, get the performance similar to import mode, but the freshness of direct query, which will be really helpful for my any operational reports where user want to see any data much more quicker than before. Yeah, let's see this direct lake power in action. Let me open up a report. So yeah, so I have this report which I have like pre-built before. So this report is connected to the data set that we saw previously. If I zoom in a little bit up here, uh, yeah, if you can see on the screen that it's connected to YouTube demo dataset or NYC Lakehouse custom dataset on the YouTube demo workspace. Maybe zoom more. Oh, yeah, there you go. So the Power BI dataset is NYC Lakehouse custom and YouTube demo. So it's connected to the same dataset that we saw previously. Uh, and if I just wanted to double check and check the performance or validate that it's actually using Direct Lake, I'll open this performance analyzer. I'll start recording and I refresh all my visuals to just see that if any of my uh, visuals is hitting the direct query instead of the DAX query. So if I look at the count of trip distance and all this stuff, it's hitting DAX query. This one is also hitting DAX query. Uh, this one is also hitting DAX query. Even the heavy visuals are hitting DAX query. Now, I can maybe hover up on visuals or maybe try to do some interactive analysis, maybe filter the data by second quarter and see if any of the other measures are still hitting any sort of direct query. So nope, everything is seems to be hitting DAX query up here. And let's see the this visual, which is a little bit heavy. This is also hitting the DAX query instead of direct query. So this is sounds really quite good for my large and rapidly changing data set because we are not in an import mode. Any update on the source data are reflected quite immediately here, and I get like performance uh, which is as fast as direct query, but without importing the data. So it kind of combines the best of both world, which is really nice. So on governance side, Fabric introduced this cool concept called domains. This allows grouping related assets like workspace into separate domains. So for example, a single marketing domain consists of one promoted workspace, and then you have like a data core consists of certified workspace, and then you have sales domain, and etc. etc. So this makes the whole ownership and access control much more clearer. So if your analytics situation becomes chaotic, the domains are your best friend. And of course, this means for more control and organization purposes. Yep. How can we talk about something as cool as Fabric without mentioning AI? So Fabric can integrate exciting capabilities with OpenAI and LangChain libraries. Uh, so yeah, let's see a simple demo on this. So I'll be showing you a straightforward demo of OpenAI to analyze the data with PySpark. We won't dive into those complex AI engineering concepts No vector embeddings, prompt engineering, or temperature tuning. I'll leave those advanced practices for another time. The goal here is to give you a showcase of capabilities that is accessible to everyone. We want to see what's possible without getting too much into the inner workings. So we'll focus on certain things, like first we'll scrape the data, some sample data, we load that into data frame, we set up some OpenAI agent, and then start asking certain natural question to see how it figure out the answers from the data. So this kind of demonstrate if you can have a conversation interfaces to start unlocking the insights and stuff. My aim here is to just pique your interest to with an easy to grasp example. There's definitely more to cover into it if you start getting into optimizing and all that stuff. But let's start simple. So what I'm doing is I'm importing a beautiful soup library to scrape the data from this open endpoint. So this will bring the data. The data looks like this. Uh, it has title, it has rating, and it has price. Once we load this data into the data frame, I'll start setting up the Azure OpenAI agents. So I'm bringing that OpenAI key an endpoint by using my key vault, which is existing in my Azure portal. So a lot of people ask nowadays how to use this key vault and bring your secrets into the Fabric notebooks, and this is how you can do it. It's quite easy. Now, after that, I create like an Azure Open AI agent right up here. Uh, my model name is Azure Back to School Demo, and I'm using GPT 335 Turbo model. So once I have created this Azure OpenAI agent, I start running those analysis query to analyze my data, or maybe I'll just have fun by asking natural language question. So for example, I've asked like, which book is the most cheapest book? So the agent kind of like sorts the data to analyze it and find that which title is the most cheapest one, which is right up here. Next, I can also do like some sort of maybe high level summary queries or high level summary kind of natural questions. So I ask him describe the average rating for all the books. So it kind of convert the ratings, I think, to integers first, uh, and then uh, create that average rating for us. The final, what I'm doing is some sort of like comparative value analysis, like just compare certain books and then find out if there are more books with 3 ratings or the 4 rating. So the agent counts, I think, the occurrence to find out. So it kind of did, and it find out the rating counts uh, pretty nicely. And the thought is there are 203 books with a rating of 3, and there are 179 books with a rating of 4. So, in nutshell, the OpenAI kind of allow us to get insight with data kind of in a conversation way. So I don't need to write like complex queries, but it's really powerful potential and very promising potential combining, AI with big data tools like Spark. So really cool. All right, enough with the boring technical stuff. Let's talk about some of the AI capabilities which Fabric is cooking. So there are some promising capabilities where you've been able to use Copilot. You can generate tags, you can generate code if you want, using all by natural language. Copilot can even summarize your data. Uh, so no more straining, your eyes to look through complex charts and graphs. More time to be creative and strategic with your data. Of course, when it comes to plugin, there are some really good integration where you've been able to again chat with your data in natural language with this data Q&A plugin. So you can ask the question in plain English like what was my revenue in a certain reason for Q1, and Fabric will automatically generate that visual response for you. So no more sweating and building queries and charts. Just try and have like casual conversation with your data, and hopefully Fabric shall handle the same for you um, with his badass AI. So in nutshell, the AI capability and the factor looks quite cool. The future looks quite promising with these kind of capabilities in Fabric. However, you shall see these in future releases. All right, we have come to an end for this quick tour of Microsoft Fabric. And I highly encourage you to check out the trial by going to powerbi.com, get yourself started with the Fabric environment, and join a community to learn more. If you have any questions, just hit me up. Thank you.